The Leominster City Council meeting is brought to you by the generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.
To communication 6, and I'll read that. One, relative to the acquisition of 3 parcels of land, 106 Central Street, 112 Central Street, 124 Central Street. 2, also relative to the appropriation of $2 million for the cost of the foregoing acquisition and development of the property for the police station purposes. 3, relative to any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of project costs approved hereunder, thereby reducing by a like amount the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs. I guess we'll open this up to the public first. Any member of the public like to speak on C-06, please approach the podium. Identify yourself and you can be heard.
Gary Zimmerman, Lynn Haven Road, Leominster. I know I'm going to be a little repetitive on the other times I've talked. And the main reason I still come here is, again, there's a lot of burden put on the taxpayer for all these bills that we get. And I'm for the police station. I'm not against it. But I just look at different things on where the money comes from, again, always from the taxpayer, and whether things are being done in other alternatives to make up for things. So one of the things I brought up before, too, is when they talked about the police station, they said they're going to put it downtown. And as I drive by the location, it really isn't downtown to me. And there's houses around it. There's an Acme Auto Body right next door. So I actually took the mileage from there to the transfer station. It's only 2.5 miles. Now, I know the police station is going to go there. This is all going to pass. But again, it would have saved the taxpayers $2 million from demolition, land purchases, because they already own the transfer station. But even beyond that, as I also talked about merging the two, fire station and police station together, when we heard the fire chief talk at the hearings for the budget. And you know, when you start hearing the stories of how old these buildings are, again, merge the police station and fire station together, if it's there on Central Street, would save taxpayers millions.
Gary, excuse me for 1 second.
Sure.
I don't want to be rude, but I have to pull a document up for this meeting right now with the assistant clerks. I am listening to you.
Okay.
Okay, I
All right.
don't want to be rude.
Thank you. Usually don't listen to me anyway, but that, no, just kidding. Just kidding.
That's the last time I go to one of your yards.
So by combining the two meetings together, I mean the two buildings together and having a public safety building, again, would say, I would guess at least $10 million by merging the buildings together. So again, from a taxpayer standpoint, every year over the last 10 years, I mean, I've paid double now in taxes, $3,000 or more out of my pocket. So again, I always try to, with my budget, look at how can I alter things around. So those are my two ideas there. As I started looking around the GIS database, I did sit with Mr. Mitchell for probably almost a good hour on trying to learn assessments, and it was very informative, and I thank him for the time for that. So what I did is I did some more poking around at different databases, because again, that one parcel of land for $1 million just kills me on the cost as I go around the property and look at the GIS database. And like Mr. Mitchell said, some of them aren't updated. But I wanted to try to get a comparison somewhere like they do, and just looking at either we're losing taxpayer money or that value of that land is just outrageous. So I looked at the Fidelity Bank, 2.82 acres. The land's assessed at $572,000. I look at Cumbies. The funny part with Cumbies is there's no GIS card at all. And I haven't had time to go down and talk to Mr. Mitchell about what that means, so I couldn't do a comparison on that one. IC Credit Union down by Home Depot, an acre. Again, the land value is at $202,000. The whole property with the building isn't even $1 million. It's $849,000. On 180 Central Street, the new gas station with Cumbies, not Cumbies in there, but Dunkin' Donuts, has all the old pictures, so there's no data there for me to look at. Speedway down in Central Street, land, an acre, $115,000. So nothing I really found was near $1 million, so I don't know what that really means. So either land, then I actually found the land next to Speedway. There's a little over 2 acres for sale. They just lowered the price to $899,900. So that was a little more comparison, so that made me feel a little better. It's not sold yet, so you can't use that comparison too much, but I just still thought it was interesting. The land values, either we're losing a lot of tax revenue from businesses because of the low value, and if this goes for $1 million, we should really go through this database and get these updated, and hopefully take a little more burden off the taxpayer, the residential taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on C-06? I'll ask one more time. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us relative to C-06? A third time, is there any member of the public that wants to address the council relative to C-06? Councilor Cormier, do you have anything to add, or you want to be heard? Or any member of the council generally? Any comments regarding C-06? Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr.
Yep, thank you very much. Just to respond to a comment that Mr. Zimmerman made, hopefully at some point that the property that the city owns down off Jungle Road, I mean, that's almost an investment that the city has. I mean, because at some point, hopefully, I understand your point about us having to spend money now, but hopefully in the future, when the city does have somebody interested in that property, that the city will be able to sell that and realize some of that money back.
Hopefully the same value with this property.
I hope more. Let's hope more. But thank you. Thanks.
Any other member of the council? Councilor Frida?
Are we able to respond? Is that part of the hearing process now?
Well, I was being lax with my response to that, and
Are
it's
you
okay.
continuing to be lax?
If you'd like, I'll afford you the same opportunity.
Only because I was gonna wait until the meeting started to bring it up. But I've sat on that committee for 30 years almost. I don't think there's a piece of property in the city that Mr. Zimmerman could touch on that we have not looked at. We went through them all. You'd have to do more than just look at dollars. You have to look at wetland issues. You have to look at a number of other issues with the properties. We looked at, when you said landfill, transfer station, I think you were talking about landfill on Mechanic Street?
No. Jungle Road, up by Walmart.
Where?
Up by Walmart.
Jungle
Transfer
Road.
Yeah,
station.
Jungle Road, okay. Oh, that landfill, all right. When we looked at Mechanic Street, we looked at that. There are a number of different issues with a lot of these properties, and I think to do some comparisons, Mr. Mistro can tell you better in terms of how the tax dollars are assessed on some of these properties. But this was the best site that a number of us felt was the best for a police station. And I don't know, there's just, can't even describe how so much more has to go into looking at a piece of property than just doing some initial comparables.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Mitchell's here and obviously had a large role in the process of negotiating the purchase and sale contract and the underlying value for the purchase and sale contract. Do you want to be heard in, maybe specifically you could confirm one thing that I was thinking about when Mr. Zimmerman presented his material, was that this sale will actually become part of the basis for evaluating or assessing property in the future, will it not?
That's a tricky question, because we are assembling properties. So we can look at each property individually and determine if it's an arm's length transaction. Typically, when it's a governmental use, we know that the appraisal came in at 900,000. We're paying $1 million to avoid. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. We're looking at that property. We're paying $1 million for the property. It appraised at 900,000. We're overpaying simply because we have a potential use for the property, and we're assembling lots aside of it to make that use happen. So that can be determined a non-arm's length transaction, which, because there are certain specifics in there that wouldn't allow us to consider it in our overall analysis. There are other properties throughout the city that, if you look at the appraisal that Mr. Foster did to determine that 900,000, those 3 properties in there are considered arm's length transaction. Those are more typical of what would be utilized in the analysis to determine commercial property. So there's a lot that goes into it. Mr. Zimmerman and I did sit down for over an hour, and I'd be happy to sit with him again to look at some of the properties on the GIS database that he's brought up, because it's hard to determine each one without looking at it and figuring out what kind of use we have on the property. Why is it, when's the last time it was inspected? Do we have the current data? Those things, when you're trying to appraise 15,000 properties every single year, you're hoping that you get the most current data and you have the most accurate information out there. So it is a little bit hard to determine, to sit here and second guess. I know that the mayor did a good job and Councilor Freed did a good job realizing that we've looked at 15 other properties over the last, I don't know how many years, to try and determine a good place for this police station. Although Mr. Zimmerman, says that it's 2 miles from downtown, it's still very centrally located. It gives them access to the immediate downtown center as well as the outskirts of the city. So the site selection committee did determine at that point, based on the current use and space needs that the police station needed to construct and the current requirements for each police station, that we needed close to a 3.2 acre site in the center of the city. So it's very hard, no matter which site we look at, that we're going to be talking about demolition of properties. We're going to be talking about paying a premium. We looked at other industrial properties, and whenever anybody hears that the city's going to be buying their property, they want $1 million for the property. It's just the way it works. So negotiations become difficult. People become difficult with that negotiation step. We were fortunate that Mr. Garapi, his property was within $100,000 of the appraised value, and the others wanted the appraised value for the property. So it was a pretty fair constitution between both parties and pretty straightforward. And I think the city, although it may seem like a high amount of money, did a very diligent job of looking at properties, and we paying what we did. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Is any member of the council, Councilor Feckley?
Yeah, I think that you said this in what you just said, but just so I can extract it out. So the property may be a little bit more expensive than the city would have wanted to pay, but the fact of its location and the necessity for us to have so much land for a big police station with enough parking for police vehicles, the public, and so on and so forth, really makes the property a little bit more valuable than it normally would have been for any other use. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. It's very similar to what we refer to as an abutting sale. If you have a property that you abut to, that the abutter is going to pay a premium for that property because it has more use to them than it does the rest of the market. It's very similar to what we we came across. We have a very specific use of a very specific location we're looking for a very specific type. And when you're looking at those factors, there are premiums involved that obviously we're going to pay more than other people would.
Anyone else? Councilor Frida?
I just wanted on the record that throughout the whole conversation, that I'm exempting myself from 112, Mr. Witten's property. for
So
conflict
noted.
of interest.
Thank you, Council. Okay, one more time to the public. Does any member of the public have any, want to be heard with regard to C-6? Any member of the council? I believe, Mr. President, this is actually assigned to legal affairs and finance, if I'm not
Jointly, correct.
mistaken. So I think at this point, I would close the public hearing. I only have, if you want to poll my committee, I only have one other committee member here this evening.
Sure. Councilor Cormier?
I have nothing further, and I would agree that we should close the.
Okay.
All right, so we'll close, and I would defer to the chairman of legal affairs.
I concur with the finance chair. I think closing the public hearing at this point is good. I just ask you to poll, obviously, Councilor Gaines
Right.
is in court.
Councilor Frida?
I agree.
Good, okay. The action is to?
Both committees apparently are in favor of the C-6.
Okay, thank you. Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
You're welcome. Just point of order that our bylaws do state, if you do vote on this tonight, that it is a 2/3 majority vote by all members of the city council, even if not present.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make that
Okay,
clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do the public forum very quickly. I'll open it up. The public forum is now open. It's an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda this evening. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. Would anyone like to step up to the podium and address the council? And just as a formal thing, name and address.
Gary Zimmerman, 47 Lynn Haven Road. I just want to respond a little bit. Again, I'm not questioning the land spots as much as the price and the assessment value of $1 million when you go compare. Even that plot of land is valued at $150,000, just like the Witten property next to it and the property next to it, roughly around $150,000. When you go look around at all these businesses and you look at their land value, the land value is very small, $150,000, $200,000 for a quarter of an acre to an acre and a half. So if this does sell, even for $1 million, and the assessed value is $900,000, to me, that's when I have a question of these other values that are pretty similar. When you go in the database and you look at the properties, whether it's AutoZone or Speedway or anything, they're flat land. But again, I know there's a whole formula behind it. That's more of my point behind the $1 million purchase. And if it does go through, that those other properties are very similar, and this property is 5 times the value, or 4 times the value of its assessed value of like $250,000. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I'm not questioning land and the purchase and where it's going. I know for me, saving $2 million would be a lot, but mine is just more how the assessments are valued. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council? Second call, third and final call. If not, the public forum is closed. Thank you. We'll be in session at 6:30. I'm sorry.
It said 6:15.
6:15, I'm sorry, yep. Okay, there we go. To the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with the roll call vote of the honorable members of the council. Begin with Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Odinger.
Present.
Councilor Bonanza.
Present.
Councilor Feckley.
Present.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Present.
Councilor Frida.
Present.
We have 8 councilors present. Councilor David Cormier is not here this evening. Is the chairwoman of records ready to report? We have anything tonight?
I have no records tonight, Mr. President.
Okay, that's fine. We'll catch up with that on Monday night.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna go right to petitions, first time on the calendar. There's been some question on 1019, and I'll open it up for discussion, but it appears as though right now it should be going to legal affairs. And this is for the new view liabilities and asset, and I'll talk a little bit more about this after, I yield the floor to the chairman.
Well, first time on the calendar, we'd request regular course.
Okay. And you have any referrals at all on it, or?
I probably want to hear more about it,
Okay.
and then make the referrals afterwards, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. So just to shed some light on that petition right there, there's been some confusion from the petitioner on how this is actually submitted to the council. One of the things that they have to do in a matter of finishing up this month, and that's why we have it on the agenda tonight, is they have to come to a conclusion on a vote taken by the city council. There's a planned joint meeting with the planning board coming up later this month. That's part of their requirement. But one of the problems that the petitioner actually ran into is that the changing of the guides and the staffing here in the building with the planning board. As we know right now, we have an interim director. So I think Kristen, our previous director, would have probably had a pretty good handle on how to go about this type of an application or a process. And what's happened is it's been bounced around a little bit. I had a discussion with Mr. Dohan this afternoon and just explained to him that it is not the responsibility of the city clerk to put the pieces together of the puzzle that are right now missing in order to be able to prepare to come down here to share with the council. So what's going to happen is he's going to be working aggressively with the administration to make sure when they do come down here, they have everything in order. So, the council can make an intellectual decision on whether they want to support this concept or not. So I'll be working with him, almost talking with him on a regular basis till we get to the process where it becomes a vote. But it is kind of fragmented right now, and there's really just a little bit of confusion on his part and also some of the new people in the city on where to go with this. But it's definitely not the city clerk that is going to take the front with this. At the end of the day, there's also some tax incentive involved with that. So, legal affairs would be involved, but probably finance at the same time. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. Regular course. Thank you very much. Moving back to the agenda here, we have matters before the city council. We don't have any matters outside of old business. We have any old business? I'll yield the floor to, it looks like, the chairman of finance.
Yes, Mr. President. This is a second reading related to C-6 as follows. Number 1, relative to the acquisition of 3 parcels of land, 106 Central Street, 112 Central Street, and 124 Central Street. 2, also relative to the appropriation of $2 million for the cost of the foregoing acquisition and development of the property for police station purposes. And number 3, relative to any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of project costs approved hereunder, thereby reducing by a like amount the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs. This was heard just a little earlier this evening. The unanimous recommendation of both Finance and Legal Affairs was to grant C-6 or the second reading, and it would be our position of those 2 committees to pass the second reading.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read to pass the Communication 6. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Frida, you have the floor.
Again, because we're in session,
Right.
I'm abstaining from 112 due to a possible conflict of interest.
That will,
Um,
go ahead.
I also have another comment.
That will be noted in the minutes of the record for you. You
Thank you.
still have the floor.
I think it's important to address Mr. Zimmerman's comments. He is a citizen and he does pay attention. And it's very difficult, and I'm sure Mr. Mitchell, as well as my profession, the constant question is the difference between the assessed value of a property and what somebody would sell it for. And I'd be willing to bet if I asked Mr. Zimmerman if he'd sell his property for the assessed value, that would almost be a no. And I'm sure Mr. Mitchell told you it's a compilation of 3 to 5 years for an assessed value, where an appraised value was on the money today, on the time that the appraisal is done. So it's a different ballgame, subject to supply and demand, subject to a number of different things. And it's very difficult to see where the values come when you're looking at assessed values. And I understand what Mr. Zimmerman's saying about the cost of this one and what the tax dollar would be. But that's also why it's important to keep some of our other properties for sale, especially in an area that's continuing to grow, in an industrial and mixed-use area. So I think it's just important that that be understood, that the number is most of the time lower, except when the economy takes a drastic turn, then it flips because you're years behind trying to determine why your property won't sell for the assessed value. So it's a time thing, and I just think it's important to know that we're not overpaying because the assessed value is $900,000.
Okay, thank you. Would any of the councilors like to comment or ask any questions? Council Bonanza.
Yeah, I think the council's points are well taken. Obviously, in any transaction, especially one of this nature, who the buyer is entirely relevant to the price, and the buyer's need for the property and ultimate use for the property is also entirely relevant to the price. And unlike the private sector, we don't have the ability or advantage to send in straws or secretive folks to buy up options or things like that. We're doing it in the light of day. I can think of some pretty famous cases where land was acquired through straws and ultimately ended up in a project. And there's a reason for that, of course. So it underscores the point that the identity of the buyer and the buyer's use are entirely important to coming up with a value. I think this is a really great site. It's been a long time, and it's really good to see this moving forward. Finally, I think it's a wonderful thing for the city in general and the police department in particular.
Thank you. Councilor Cormier?
Just to address that, and I think that Mr. Mitchell explained it very well at the last meeting and explained himself again tonight, is the amount that the city is paying for this property. And I get the feeling that there's people out there, and I'm not suggesting Mr. Zimmerman, but I'm getting the feeling that there's people out there thinking that there's somebody that's that's holding their, and we all know what the property is, that's holding the city hostage and asking for this absorbent amount of money. Well, he's not. He's not. It's worth $100,000 of the assessed value, as Mr. Mitchell explained to us, and the additional $100,000. If the city were to take it by eminent domain, my understanding is we would have to pay to find him a similar place, pay to move him. That extra $100,000 would get sucked up in that in just a minute. So I don't like that there's people, and perhaps it's people in the public, believing that there's somebody that's holding the city hostage and saying, I want this huge amount, and that's it. This is also a property that he bought quite a while back. The value of it then was very high. He invested a ton of money into it, and he's not making a huge profit on this property. He's getting what its value is, and I think that it's the perfect property. This makes perfect sense, and I don't believe that the city is overpaying for any of these properties.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote, keeping in mind we need 6 votes to pass. It is the second reading of Communication 6. We'll begin with Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Cormier is a yay. Counselor Odenger.
Yay.
Counselor Odenger is a yay. Counselor Bonanza.
Yay.
Counselor Bonanza is a yay. Counselor Feckley.
Yay.
Counselor Feckley is a yay. Counselor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Counselor Shalfo Zephyr is a yay. Counselor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Counselor Dombrowski is a yay. Counselor Frida.
Yay.
Counselor Frida is a yay, and I shall be recorded as yay by a vote of 8-0. Communication 6 has been adopted, the second reading. Thank you very much. Keeping in mind, we have a meeting right around the corner, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we just have to.